Alright, this is Niko's story. Chapter 6, Slice of Life. Here we go. After the Voivode's Council, Kay gonna lurk. See you guys later. Sounds good, country girl. Enjoy whatever you're doing. Thank you for the lurk. Always appreciate it. After the Voivode's Council, night enveloped Nova Kiev with a veil of ash and icy mist. Around a makeshift fire lit in a barrel, Den and his companions had gathered to eat with the city's inhabitants. The air smelled of smoke, roasted meat, and cheap alcohol. Den sat slightly apart, a metal cup in his hands, observing the scene without really participating. A man grabbed a guitar and began singing in a gravely voice. I'm a ranger, premature baby of war, haven't slept in 3 days, my canteen's got a hole, sleeping, bathing in radiation, lulled by the rain. Woman sitting beside him joined in without hesitation. New day, new wound, I need a new gun, yesterday's raider was just a punk. Laughter erupted and a few voices joined the song, stomping their boots on the frozen ground to keep the rhythm. It was a good evening, kind of moment that would usually have relaxed Den, but not tonight. With the corner of his eye, he watched Alice, sitting with the warriors from the Levant. She was talking with Rakid, a smile on her lips, nodding as he taught her a few words in their language. She repeated after him, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes confidently, and the translator encouraged her with amused patience. Den clenched his jaw and looked back at the fire. Didn't even know why it bothered him so much. Well, he knew. But he refused to admit it. Then he felt a gaze on him. He looked up, slightly, and met Alice's eyes. She raised an eyebrow and said in a mocking, light tone, If you keep staring at me like that, your eyes are gonna pop out of your head. Caught in the act, Den quickly looked away and shrugged. I wasn't staring, he muttered. Sure, Alice replied, teasing. She resumed her conversation with Rakid, but Den could tell she was keeping an eye on him. As if she was enjoying the situation. Made him fume even more. He didn't respond, choosing to stare at the flames. But a few seconds later, he felt a light kick against his boot. He looked up. Alice was staring at him, smiling. You don't look too comfortable, she remarked, her tone wavering between provocation and curiosity. I'm just tired, Den replied, his voice tight. Alice raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Tired from what? Walking too much or thinking too much? She asked, studying him closely. Den gripped his cup tighter, the cold metal pressing into his palm. I don't feel like talking, he snapped. Alice pretended to think it over. Oh, poor little Denisovich. Is sulking because I'm spending time with other people? Den shot her a glare. You can talk to whoever you want, he said sharply. Alice shifted and amused, laughed. Oh, thank you for giving me permission, she exclaimed with irony. Silence settled between them. Den pretended to take a sip, but his hand trembled slightly. Nearby, Nadia was watching the scene, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Her gaze shifted from Den to Alice, then back to Basim, who shrugged slightly. She muttered in Arabic. This guy doesn't seem to realize she's teasing him on purpose. Basim smirked. Or maybe he knows it perfectly well and it's pissing him off even more. Rakid, who overheard, took a sip of alcohol, holding back a laugh. Den hadn't understood what they said, but he could guess he was on the target of their comments. He looked up at them wary. Got a problem? Rakid shrugged, amused. Nothing at all, just remarks about things that sometimes slip through the cracks. Den snorted and turned his attention back to his drink. Alice, however, hadn't taken her eyes off him. Instead of staring at me, why don't you tell me what's really weighing on you? Den looked at her for a moment before shaking his head. Nothing's weighing on me. Alice rolled her eyes, frustrated. Fine, whatever. I'm going back to talk with people who don't look so miserable. She stood up, throwing Den one last mocking glance before returning to Rakid. Den clenched his teeth. He wanted to retort, to stop her, to tell her what he was feeling, but he couldn't. Not yet. As Alice rejoined the Levant warriors, she sat next to Nadia, who gave her a knowing look. Your man's a bit of a blockhead, Nadia said. Rakid translated with an amused smile. Alice sighed, crossed her arms, and glanced at Den, who was staring at his cup as if he wanted the most fascinating thing in the world. As if it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Yeah, I know. She took a deep breath before adding, almost reluctantly. That's exactly the problem. Nadia chuckled, exchanging a conspiratorial glance with her companions. In my tribe, we think men like that aren't worthy of us. In mine, Alice countered, when you want a man, you try to make him understand. Basim watched Alice, a sly smile on his lips. He saw her sigh and take a long sip, visibly annoyed, before casting a fleeting glance at Den, still lost in his silence. You're waiting too long, Basim said. Rakid translated, and Alice raised an eyebrow. Sorry? Basim stretched slowly, like a cat waking from a nap, and fixed her with an amused look. You're waiting for him to make the first move, to come to you, to figure out what you want on his own. But look at him. You're on the same wavelength, but you're giving him the opposite impression. Seems not wrong, Nutty Smile added. Why are you waiting for him to decide for you? Alice crossed her arms and looked at Den again, still with his head down, looking utterly dejected. It's frustrating, she murmured. Then do something about it, Basim said. He let the silence linger before adding in a calmer tone. If you keep trying to make him understand without saying it outright, he's going to give up. Alice felt a surge of irritation, but said nothing. She knew he was right. The next day, Den was roused from sleep by an insistent pressure on his shoulder, groaned and tried to burrow deeper into his blanket, but the hand returned, more formally this time. Come on, get up, lazybones. Alice's voice, soft but laced with her characteristic irony, pulled him from the half-sleep. Cracked one eye open, seeing her face leaning over him. She was crouched, arms crossed, her mocking smile firmly in place. If you keep pretending to sleep, I'll dump a bucket of water on your head. Den sighed deeply before sitting up slowly. His hair fell messily around his tired face. What do you want? He mumbled, still groggy. Alice sat beside him, cross-legged, and studied him for a moment before answering. I want your opinion. Den raised an eyebrow. Opinion on what? She took a breath, hesitated for a second, then locked eyes with him. On us. Den blinked, still foggy from sleep. Us? Alice rolled her eyes, exasperated. Yes, us, you and me. It's a weird dance we've been doing for months. The stupid game where I tease you, you pretend not to get it, and we just keep going in circles. Den fell silent. He hadn't expected this. Not out of the blue. Not first thing in the morning. Alice crossed her arms, her scrutinizing gaze fixed on him. I'm waiting for you to tell me what you want, Den. He ran a hand over his tired face and sighed. Do you really have to ask that question now? Yes, she replied without hesitation. He inhaled slowly, searching for the words. Alice, He hesitated. I don't know how to handle this. She raised an eyebrow. Handle what? You, me, us. He ran a hand through his messy hair. I don't want to screw this up. Alice stayed silent for a moment before shaking her head with a bitter smile. You're just scared of taking a risk. Den clenched his jaw. That's not it. Then what is it? She snapped, losing patience. He looked away, staring at an invisible point in front of him. I'm scared that if we do this, and it fails, I'll lose you. Alice stared at him, her gaze softening slightly. You almost lost me once already, and yet I'm still here. Den finally turned his head toward her. She was looking at him with that intensity that always unsettled him. That line hit fucking hard because, like, basically for my great white buffalo, like the one that got away, we had both made a decision that we were going to remain friends because we were worried that if we got in a relationship, it would ruin our friendship. And then 7 years later, we got into a relationship and it ruined our friendship. At least I got 7 years of great memories and shit. Great friendship. Oh, and it still didn't work out in the end even after all of that. So, that's life for you, right? So that hit me pretty hard there. I love that, Country Girl. It's so true. You almost lost me. Oh, we already read that. So what's the plan? She asked in a low voice. He stared at her, his heart pounding, and for once he didn't look away. Dan looked at Alice, his heart beating harder than he cared to admit. The confidence she exuded, that provocative glint in her eyes. She was done. Done staying on the sidelines, done beating around the bush, done letting things slip away. So he stood up, abruptly, raised an eyebrow, a sly smile still on her lips. Alice raised an eyebrow, a sly smile still on her lips. "Oh, you finally gonna say something, or you just gonna keep staring in silence?" Den didn't think anymore. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward him. Den? She didn't have time to say anything else. Gonna wait for the ad before we carry on with the next piece on here, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ad. That was pretty good. I had no idea. I purely winged that. I gotta take a piss though. I'll be right back. Grab some more water as well. While I'm at it. Ugh. All right. He placed a hand behind her neck and kissed her. A direct, raw, no hesitation kiss. Not just a brush of lips, but something far more intense, more urgent. All the frustration, all the built-up tension exploded in a single action. Alice froze for a second, caught off guard. Then she responded, her hand gripping his collar, her fingers tightening slightly on the fabric. When they parted, Den's breath was short. He kept his forehead pressed against hers, their breaths mingling. "You win," he murmured finally. Alice stared at him, slightly dazed but mostly amused. "I win, huh?" "Yeah," he replied, a faint smirk on his lips. She let out a small laugh and gave him a light tap on the chest. "Took you long enough." Den shrugged. "Had to be sure." Alice rolled her eyes, but her smile softened. "Idiot." "You're the one who picked me," she huffed, feigning exasperation. "Damn, you're not wrong." Silence settled between them. "Sup, y'all? Yo, Raymond Dahl, what's up, good sir? How are you?" "How was the day, Raymond?" You're reading Niko's story. Two characters just had their first kiss. Alice ran a hand through her hair and stepped back slightly. So, now that we've sorted this out, what's next? Dan looked at her for a second, then raised an eyebrow, playful. You want me to draw you a picture? Alice burst out laughing. Oh, I'm good. Hell yeah, Raymond. You got another essay for us, brother? Another big word down hard, go in on it essay? Oh, look at that. You're all confident now. Let's just say you convinced me. She smiled, then crossed her arms, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Good. Now let's see if you can keep up. Dan shook his head, laughing. I'm screwed, aren't I? Totally. And she fell into his arms. Translating one? Hell yeah. Riddell was waiting outside the ruined building where Dan had spent the night. His gaze wandered over the dystopian landscape stretching before him. The ruins of Nova Kiev were vast. Between collapsed buildings and those rebuilt with whatever was at hand, there were far more empty homes than families to fill them. Everyone could sleep under a roof, however dilapidated. Streets were still cluttered with debris, and the city center had been razed to its foundations, but the rest held up. A militia of rangers patrolled silently, while parents walked their children through the streets. Even a few dogs trotted alongside their owners. Riddell raised an eyebrow. Owning a pet was a luxury in a world where every ration counted, but these four-legged companions also served as guards and living alarms against intruders. Leaned against a crumbling wall, arms crossed. He'd been waiting for Den for a while now. Finally, Den appeared. Descending from the building with Alice, a wide grin split Riddell's face. You two done? He called out, feigning innocence. Den raised an eyebrow, his face flushing as he caught the insinuation. What? He stammered, uncomfortable. Riddell raised his hands in a gesture of peace, his grin widening. I've been waiting here for half an hour. Came to get you, but I turned back when I heard noises. Alice rolled her eyes when Den mumbled something incoherent. Come on, it's just nature, no shame in it, Riddell added with a shrug. Den groaned and crossed his arms, staring off into the distance, as if hoping the ground would swallow him whole. Alice, meanwhile, flashed a sly smile and patted Den's shoulder, whispering mockingly, Admit it, it's nice having someone else make you blush for a change. Riddell burst out laughing. All right, Den said, clearly eager to change the subject. What now? We wait, Riddell replied. Den raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Seriously, Riddell confirmed, stretching. Getting the European leaders together will take time, and we need to pick the voivode to represent us. Dan sighed loudly, crossing his arms. And in the meantime, we're supposed to do what? We live, Riddell said with a shrug. I'm a surgeon, and trust me, there's no shortage of work. You two need to find something to do. We're mercenaries, not tourists. Alice stretched and looked at Dan. Great, we'll have to work. Vacations are for the dead, Riddell quipped, laughing. He grabbed 2 bags from his belt and tossed them to Den and Alice. Den opened his immediately, finding a mix of Kalas? Currency used by European tribes, and 7.62 millimeter cartridges. He closed the bag and rolled it in his hand, gauging its value. You counted? He asked without looking up. Yeah, don't worry, Riddell replied. The payment for escorting the Levant men, plus a bonus from the voivode. Boris already took his share. Alice raised an eyebrow, and she grabbed her own bag and shook it lightly. And these billets, where'd they come from? It's a French word? Okay, so it's probably pronounced Kala? It's a way to say money. So you pronounce that like Kali. Kali. Right? In French? Ignore half of the letters. Kayas. Kayase. Kayase, Kayase. Kayase. Chaos? 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 Chaos. Double L equals Y. Double L equals Y? What? What? How? Fucking rules. Bullshit. Caius. 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 Kaya or Kaya? Or Kaya? I don't know. I will never learn to speak anything but Japanese because Japanese is pronounced except for the long O's, which is an extra U, and then N is on its own. Easiest language to pronounce. In these bullets, where'd they come from? The Levant guys don't have a monetary system, Liddell explained. They pay in resources, and ammo's always a safe bet. Alice smirked, spinning a piece of Cullisay between her fingers. Caius. Good old barter. Guess we can trade this at an armorer's. Dan nodded, his mind already elsewhere. He knew ammo sold well, but he'd have to haggle to get the price up. Rodell slung his bag over his shoulder and gave him the wink. Worst French word for native English is... Quin... I'm guessing that's Kikaeus? Or Wakaeus? Is it Wakaeus? Wakaeus. Kincaid. Jesus Christ. Woof! That's a beast. That's a beast of a word with a beast of a spelling. I thought Chinese was bad. Alright, I've got work to do. Good luck finding some. He walked off at a leisurely pace, leaving them alone in the dusty streets of Nova Kiev. Den sighed, slinging his bag over his shoulder. Now what? Alice asked, tucking her bag against her hip. Den shrugged. We find a way to not starve, Alice grinned. As long as you don't start selling your body, we'll be fine. Den shot her a dark look as she burst out laughing. Best language is Spanish. It's written the same way to pronounce. Yeah, this is the same way with Japanese. Except Japanese has different phonetic alphabet. It's both phonetic and image. I went for a glass of water, and as I took my earphones, I could hear call Kaya, and I got to the door ladder and said, "This is bullshit." Words are total bullshit. Oh my god. Dan and Alice pushed open the door to the drunken survivor. A steedy bar in Nova Kiev where most contracts were negotiated. Place reeked of cheap alcohol and cigarette smoke. Stalkers, fresh off missions, spoke in hushed tones. Off-duty militiamen drank in silence, and a few merchants traded supplies for Caius. Under the barman's watchful eye, the pair scanned the room until they spotted a woman sitting alone at a table. Glass of alcohol in her hand, her grim expression, a tense posture suggested she wasn't there for fun. Looking for stalkers for a mission, she called out loudly, briefly drawing the attention of the nearest patrons. Dan and Alice exchanged a glance before sitting across from her without ceremony. Hey, Den said. I'm Den, and this is Alice. We're stalkers, looking for work. The woman looked up at them, sizing them up with a sharp gaze. She was in her 30s, her face marked by fatigue, but still sharp with vitality. Her blonde hair was tied in a loose braid, and she wore a patched-up trench coat with a worn, bullet-proof vest. Seasoned road warrior. She took a sip from her glass before responding. You look pretty young for this kind of work. Den crossed his arms on the table and faced. Maybe young, but we can handle ourselves. Alice nodded, a smirk on her lips. We've already proven ourselves out there. The woman studied them for a moment before nodding. I need to go to Valkar territory. I have a message to deliver to them. Den and Alice exchanged a glance. The Valkar were a proud and independent people, but they were part of Europe and maintained good relations with their allies. The mission didn't sound too complicated. In theory... What message? Den asked, curious. The woman raised an eyebrow, a faint smile on her lips. What? You want to know if it's dangerous? Alice chuckled softly. He just wants to make sure we won't get kicked out at gunpoint the moment we set foot there. Fair enough, the woman admitted. I need to deliver a summons for the European Leaders' Council. We need a Valkar representative. Den nodded slowly. Alice already weighing the risks, asked, just a delivery mission, no negotiations, no goods to transport. None of that, the woman confirmed. I'd rather not travel alone. The road's long and you never know who you might run into. She extended her hand toward them. By the way, I'm Vanya. Vanya Kuryalenko. Kuryalenko. Kuryalenko? Kuryenko? Kuryalenko? 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 Kuryalenko. 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 Dunno. Dan and Alice shook her head hand in turn. The 23rd one was the correct one, right? And the pay. Dan asked. Standard rate for a long-distance escort. Vanya replied. In Caius. Alice nodded. Works for us. Vanya downed her drink and stood up. Good. Be ready in 3 days. We leave at sunrise. Dan and Alice watched the blonde head to the bar. They'd just landed an interesting contract. The day after meeting Vanya, Dan and Alice roamed the streets of Nova Kiev looking to bolster their gear. They'd been well paid for their escort mission with the Levant men, but they didn't want to blow it all at once. The market was buzzing, makeshift stalls stretching between gutted buildings. Ammo, spare parts, secondhand clothes, and even some exorbitantly priced weapons. Everything was available, as long as you could pay. Alice haggled for a holographic sight of her, for her Swami KP-31. Well, Den scored a pair of reinforced gloves, worn but still sturdy. These I can hit harder, he joked. Who are you planning to hit? Alice teased. Dunno, maybe you. She shot him a sideways glance, amused. You're cute, but you don't get to bite yet. Dan rolled his eyes, a smirk tugging at his lips. That afternoon, they met up with Riddell, who, as usual, seemed to have 1,000 things to do. He'd just patched up a merchant who'd cut his hand fixing a vehicle. Wait, you two already bored? He asked. A little, Alice admitted. We're leaving in 2 days, Dan added. Riddell raised an eyebrow. Oh, where to? The Valkar. The young surgeon's eyes narrowed, clearly intrigued. Wait. You're going to see those lunatics with machine guns mounted on their pickups. Don't say that. They're our allies, Alice retorted. Yeah, but they're still nuts, Riddell said, laughing. Den shrugged. We've got a mission. Delivering a summons for the European Council. Just then, Hussein and Rakid arrived. They greeted the group before turning their attention to Den and Alice. We overheard, Hussein said. Overheard what? Alice asked. You're heading to see the Valkar. Den nodded. Yeah, why? Hussein crossed his arms. Rakid and I are coming with you. Alice raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Why? Rakid smiled. Because a lone European messenger might not be enough to convince them. We represent our people, and our presence will lend more weight to the discussions. Den thought it over. It made sense. The Valkar respected strength and the word of warriors. Having foreign fighters personally deliver a message could tip the scales in Europe's favor. Alice exchanged a glance with Den before shrugging. Can't say no to that. Welcome aboard. On the second day, Dan and Alice spent part of the morning training on a vacant lot near the ruins. They tested their gear and made sure they were combat ready. Why the warm-up? Den asked as Alice practiced, knife knife movements, because I'm not getting caught off guard by an overzealous Valkar. Den nodded, grabbing his VZ-58. All goes well, we won't have to fight. If all goes well, Alice echoed, skeptical. They spent the afternoon finalizing their supplies. Den took inventory of their rations and ammo, while Alice tinkered with their radio to improve its reception in open terrain. Meanwhile, Hussein and Rakid gathered their own resources. They traveled light, prioritizing speed over bulk. Hussein carried his bolt-action rifle and an AK-74 SU, while Rakid, more discreet, opted for a pistol and an ornate dagger. At the end of the day, everyone gathered around at the fire in a quiet Nova Kiev style. Few musicians played an impromptu melody in the distance, and laughter echoed from some buildings. Vanya joined them, a bottle of local moonshine in hand. "Ready for the big departure?" she asked, pouring around. Den took a glass and shrugged. "We'll see." Alice clinked glasses with Hussein and Rakid. "The Valkar welcome us without shooting in the air. I'll call it a win." On the morning of departure, Dan and Alice woke early. They grabbed a quick meal and double-checked their gear. Convoy was preparing in a cleared square near the ruins of the city center. A reinforced pickup awaited them. With Vanya at the wheel, Hussein and Rakid approached, already prepared. Riddell had come to see them off. "Take care of yourselves," he said, crossing his arms. "Don't worry, we'll come back in one piece," Alice replied with a wink. Den climbed into the back of the pickup, securing the crates of equipment. Vanya tied her hair with a ponytail and started the engine. "Everyone ready?" Alice settled into the passenger seat and turned to the group. "If anyone wants to bail, now's your last chance." No one moved. Vanya smiled and shifted into first gear. "All right, let's roll." The vehicle lurched forward, kicking up a cloud of dust as it left Nova Kiev behind. The journey to the Valkar lands had begun. Absolutely kick-ass fucking chapter. Characters finally get together. Doesn't seem all that too ridiculous that they are all like, you know, why don't you just go ahead and fucking do it? He's never gonna get it. Stop beating yourself up. I felt that was a very nice touch of just being like, hey, get in there. Get over it. Go do it. Stop being a bitch. Go. And definitely the relationship between them is super strong. So, the characterization is super powerful. I kind of want to get to know the other guys now, though. So I'm glad that they're coming through, because I was like, there's no way they're just there for that. You know, there's got to be more of them. And sure enough, there they are. Just like I knew. Oh, perfect. Perfect. And the explanation for the craziness of the Valkar kind of, because you've already stated that, like, the Horde is kind of crazy, so maybe saying, like, a different kind of crazy than the Horde. I don't know, maybe emphasize that they're not, like, bloodthirsty crazy, they're just, like, independent safety defense crazy. I don't know how you would do that, but, like, you know, maybe you could do something like that. But, yeah, I don't know what else to say, like, dialogue was absolutely solid. Back and forth between the characters was great. Change of perspective went cleanly. Introduction to new character, just boom, off the bat, here we go. We get her done. We're on a mission. Let's go. We got something to do. Maybe expanding a little bit more on who Vanya is and why, you know, she's the one who's the messenger who's doing that. They were started by an American. Wait, what, Sean? Who were started by an American? I'm confused. You lost me. They're good crazy, right? No, not necessarily. They just have ceremonial daggers. If we're talking about, like, Hussein and Rakid and Naya and Basim, like the sons of the Levant, or the You know, Warriors of the Levant. The V name. Crazy guys with machine guns on their truck. Oh, the Valkar. Yeah, but what's the difference between them and the Horde? Wouldn't the Horde be the same way? Like, there hasn't been a lot of description for, like, what the Horde is. And why it's so bad. Like, they're not civilized people, right? Whereas the Valkar seem to be civilized, but they're just, you know, Northern Europe people. The Valkar or the Horde? Everyone carry a gun here. Ah. Like everyone in America. Sent from Soviet Russia, maybe. The Horde, that is. The Valkar. Okay. So what about the Horde? What makes the Horde so, like, canonically, like, just its size? Horde is from Central Asia. Okay. And it's just an army that just marches in one direction and destroys everything in its path, essentially. Assimilating whatever's left in the form of slave warriors. Yeah, I was thinking Mongolians. I'm thinking, like, Sword of Truth, like Jagang. Like, the armies coming across the borders from the south and in the east. They just switch from horse to motorbike. Ah. I see, I see. Well, it's definitely a powerful chapter. And I'm so glad the characters finally get together. I was worried that it was like they weren't going to. That this was just going to be like a journey of sexual frustration. Stop edging me, bro! Alright, well, Sean, you're up next. How are they getting fuel and the like? I'm assuming this is post-apocalyptic. Yes. But it's like... what, like 60 to 80 years? Maybe even like 100 years after it. So, like, infrastructure exists, economy exists, like, culture exists. So, like, whatever it is, they've kind of found a way to start rebuilding society, essentially. Right, Niko? Like, the two main characters were born after the disaster, right? They don't... like, even their parents weren't even, like, born yet. How many years after World War III and, like, nuclear destruction and the apocalypse does the story take place? Because I'm thinking, like, World War III in 2060, and this is, like, the year, like, 2150.